So in this video we're going to discuss the tools and materials for the first week of Challenge 50 version 3. Tool number 1 is the G-cramp. G-cramp is used to hold wood in place whilst cutting or for assembly. So we would commonly use that in the workshop to secure a piece of timber to the bench whilst cutting it with the Tenon Saw, for example. And we'd also use it if we are gluing products together. So for example, holding a woodworking joint together, a G-cramp would often be used. We wouldn't use the G-cramp for metal or plastic work. It's only used for wood. So that's tool number 1, the G-cramp, and that's used to hold wood in place whilst cutting or for assembly. Tool number 2 is the tri-square. Tri-square is used to draw lines at 90 degrees to the edge of the wood. Again, this tool is used solely on wood. We wouldn't use this with metal or on plastics. So commonly used when we're marking out a woodworking joint to make sure that we're drawing our lines at 90 degrees to the edge. Also used to check if a joint is square or to check if a corner is square. But commonly, most common use is for drawing lines at 90 degrees to the edge of the wood. So that's tool number 2, the tri-square. Tool number 3 is the marking gauge. Marking gauge is used to draw a parallel line, a line that's parallel to the edge of the wood. So we would commonly use the marking gauge when marking the depth of a joint. So the stock of the marking gauge would be against the face of the timber, and the spur would be used to score a line along the edge. So useful for things such as halving joints, T-halving joints, cross-halving joints. We would use the marking gauge to mark the depth. It can also be used across the face side of the timber if we were marking where to stop a stopped housing joint as well. So that's the marking gauge for tool number 3. And it's used to mark a line that's parallel to the edge of the wood. Tool number 4 is the Tenon Saw. It's used to saw straight cuts in wood. So very common workshop tool. 9 times out of 10, if we're dealing with timber to be cut, we'll be cutting it with a Tenon saw. So it can be used to cut timber the whole way through, or to a given depth if we were creating a woodworking joint. So it's got the brass back along the top to help give stability and weight to the saw. Most common saw that we would use on timber in the workshop. So that's tool number 4, the Tenon saw. Tool number 5 is the bevel edge chisel, which is used to remove waste material after sawing. And again, this tool is used solely on wood. We wouldn't be using the bevel edge chisel with metal or plastic. So after we've sawn our timber to a given depth, we would use the bevel edge chisel to remove the excess with the waste material based on the joint that we were working on. So that's tool number 5, the bevel edge chisel, used to remove waste material after sawing. Material we're moving on to now, so this is material number 6, and this is red pine. Okay, so red pine is a softwood which is yellow to reddish brown in colour. It's cheap and it's very easy to work with. So the majority of the projects that we would undertake in the workshop, we will use red pine. Okay, it's a common material found in the school workshop. Also used for simple joinery projects and furniture projects as well. So that's material number 6, red pine, which is a softwood, yellow to reddish brown in colour. It's cheap and easy to work with. Material number 7 is beech. Beech is a hardwood which is pinkish brown in colour. It's quite expensive and is extremely strong. So the mallet that you use in the workshop and the handles of all the chisels that we have in the workshop and the workbenches are all made from beech. It's a very hard wearing material. So that's material number 7, beech. It's a hardwood which is pinkish brown in colour. It's quite expensive and is extremely strong. Material number 8 is plywood. Plywood is a manufactured board. It's very strong. It's made up of thin layers of wood that are glued at 90 degrees to each other. So one layer, the grain of the wood will run, for example, left to right, and the next layer, the grain will run top to bottom, and vice versa. So the next layer again would run left to right, and so on and so forth. So they're glued at 90 degrees to each other each time, which makes the material very strong. So that's material number 8. Plywood, which is a manufactured board, is very strong and is made up of thin layers of wood glued together at 90 degrees to each other. Material number 9 is aluminium. Aluminium is a non-ferrous metal, which is silver in colour. It's a very good strength to weight ratio, and it's commonly used in aeroplane bodies as well as things such as cans of juice and various other items. So material number 9 is aluminium. It's a non-ferrous metal. It's silver in colour, has a good strength to weight ratio, and is commonly used for airplane bodies. And material number 10 is acrylic. Acrylic is a thermoplastic. It's stiff, hard, and easy to work with, and is very easily scratched. Commonly used for product casings and for signage. So that's material number 10, which is acrylic. Thermoplastic is stiff, hard, easy to work with, and easily scratched. Commonly used for casings and signs.